what they're trying to do is cover up what's actually going on in Iraq. It's civil war. I mean, it's completely out of our hands now. There's no saving Iraq. People are like, well, if we pull out of Iraq now, then we'll just leave them and they'll go into civil war. They're already in civil war. I mean, their country's already ripped apart. We leveled about 80% of their whole country. There's no more buildings left. We've bombed everything. There's nothing left. These people have nothing. They're living in the streets, and you know, it's.
My name is Corey Rowe. I'm 23 years old. I was born in upstate New York. When I was 18 years old, I was approached by an Army recruiter named Sergeant Scott Ellingson. He got me interested in joining in the military. This was before September 11th. I went through the process just like any other kid. Didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea even what the infantry was when I signed up for it. I liked the golf course in the video that he showed me. From there, I went to basic training, flew down to Georgia, where I went to Fort Benning on Sand Hill, where the infantry training is. Spent about a month in holding, waiting to start basic training, and as I was in holding, I had cleared the clearing process, and I was just about to go into the military, into the basic training course, and September 11th happened. It was actually that morning, and they got us all outside in formation. They marched us into a room. They put the TV on. They didn't say anything. They just put the TV on and showed us the planes flying into the towers and the attack of the Pentagon. And then they turned the TV off and they told us to go pack our bags. From that moment on, I mean, it was absolute go time. They never told us anything else about September 11th. We didn't get any newspapers or news at all because, of course, we were in basic training and you're not allowed any of that stuff. Just about 2 weeks later, I was shipped into Afghanistan, where my unit had been for about a week. They had taken over Kandahar Airport and were setting up the perimeter and building fighting positions when I arrived. After we were established, we did essentially nothing for the next 6 months. We sat in a guard tower. If CNN came by, we'd do a little photo op. We'd answer some questions. I mean, at that point in my military career and what was going on in the world, you know, there was the reaction to September 11th. It was, you know, what America was supposed to be doing. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me because we were invading Afghanistan to go after Osama bin Laden, and we were taking over their country, you know, to find these people. But I was 18, just turning 19 at that point, and had no idea really what was going on in the big picture. I really had no idea whatsoever.
Iraq today is about, I mean, I can't even give you a number, but I'd say about 100 times worse than it was when we invaded. When we first invaded, you know, they don't have mass communication through Iraq. They don't have cell phones, so people weren't really aware of what was going on. I mean, the civilians, they knew that Americans were invading. They knew that any Iraqi army that was there had fled and left their weapons and left their military bases. But the insurgency wasn't to where it is today. I mean, people are saying, "Oh, they're insurgents. Oh, you know, they're bringing them in across the border." That might be true, but that's not the gist of it. I mean, now today, what's happening in Iraq is the locals, the people who live inside of Iraq and are fed up with the Americans and their imperialistic ways. You know, they have no choice now but to fight these people and to take them out with IEDs and weapons. I mean, the casualties have just continuously gone up, and they will continue to go up until we get out of that country. To them, it's not about Saddam Hussein. It's not about oil. It's not about any of our, you know, George Bush's foreign policy. It's about, you know, us invading their nation.
We were actually getting ready to go in Iraq before I had gotten back from Afghanistan. I actually had wrote Dylan, who has been my longtime friend for a while, and told him, "Hey man, you know, maybe it was a phone call. I said, hey man, we're going to Iraq." And that was the last thing I said about it for a while, and then we came back and we started the military build-up. From there, it was all go to Iraq. I mean, they didn't really tell us anything as per se, except that we were going. I mean, that was essentially the end of the conversation. There was weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam Hussein was crazy, and he killed his own people. That's what they told us, that he slaughtered his own people. And it was at this point that I was starting to wake up to the fact that our government was doing the exact same thing in our own backyard. But once again, I had a job to do. We had to deploy again, so I helped my unit get prepared. My unit is the 187 Rakkasans out of the 101st Airborne Division. I was in 2nd Battalion Bravo Company. While we were in Iraq, a lot of things happened by mistake. You know, it's war, things happen. While we were in Mosul, there was accidental shootings of families. A wedding party drove by. We didn't know it was a wedding party right away. They shot some celebratory fire into the air. We returned fire onto what ended up to be a wedding party. And in the end of it, we ended up killing the bride and the groom. And then shortly thereafter, just a few minutes later, in the same scenario, as that whole mess was going on, I mean, another car drove in and shot what we believed was at us. It was a small white car. We shot at it and killed a father and a son and wounded a little girl of a family going to church. And you know, it was mistakes. It was mistakes that were made, and we did our best to reconstruct the scene and try to figure out what happened.
The whole thing started because we heard machine gun fire, because we heard rounds coming from this direction. It could have been someone with an AK-47 in the wedding party. It could have been the guys in the woods, but we never found a weapon or brass to prove it. So essentially, it was most likely the wedding party that was driving down the highway in advance and was probably shooting out of the window with an AK-47. We were in an OP building, a bombed-out building that was located near the intersection between two highways. There was a what's it called when you got the aqueduct? There's an aqueduct that goes between these two major highways. We had a 240 Bravo centered right onto the intersection of the highways, locating anybody who might want to put an IED or any kind of device underneath there. The problem essentially was that these guys that are in this OP, the radio went down and they needed more heat to keep warm because it was raining out. So we drove in on the trucks, and you can't, for some reason, you know, in military you got to always go around. And so we come back and we get off here, we pull in, stop right here in this big old dirt pit, and 3rd Platoon gets out and locates themselves here and here, in rear security and forward security, pointing in this direction. There's wood line here. These are all trees. This is the highway up here. I'm up here on top of the OP. I got security on here, focusing into the wood line. I'm crossed down right about here, and I'm working on fixing a radio. At the same time, I hear what sounds to be, or what I was told by my commander afterwards, was an RPK. Was a distinctive sound of an RPK, is what he said. Supposedly, this RPK comes from here, and so this whole line opens up into the woods. Everyone's blasting. There is a guy in the woods. There's 2 guys in the woods, and they start to run out, and they run right behind this berm that's right here, and they dive into this tent. And there's this huge tent. But at this point, I'm up here. I got my sight on the berm. Everyone's laying fire into the berm because these guys are supposedly the ones that shot at us. At the same time, coming down on the highway as we're shooting into these guys, a convoy of Iraqis in personal-owned vehicles drives down there, and they start to shoot out their windows, you know, into the air or at us. No one was really sure. So all that gunfire, we stayed trained on this, while these guys flipped right onto the highway and shot up that convoy. Convoy goes, convoy stops, rolls to a dead stop, and then behind them comes another small white family car. Shots are heard in that direction. So once again, 3rd Platoon, who's on line security here, lays into the highway. That car gets lit up and just kind of swerves back and forth until it just comes to a dead stop. At this point, the guy in the tent who dove into this tent comes out and is walking away. He's got 4 small children located around him.
And I was up on the wall. I had my M4 with my ACOG sight on the guy's head, and I just couldn't take the shot because I didn't want to hit one of the kids.
We just lit up right from here, just turned our muzzles of our weapons from here to here, and just started shooting at the highway. We had a lot of wounded out of the wedding party, but the majority of the wedding party was all right, except for the bride and groom were killed. Christian family, after they came in, we thought that they were distinctively pointing a weapon out the window at us. That's what the soldier said who opened up on him. Lit into that car and killed, I believe it was the daughter and the husband, leaving the mother in a coma, and the only one that was really alive with no injuries was the young son out of that party. And then the 2 guys who essentially started the whole thing got away.
You know, in the mix of things, we didn't know. You know, we all we knew was that we were in Mosul. It was a hotbed for fire. We were getting mortar attacked daily. You know, mistakes are made, and in the end, we didn't end up catching the bad guy. We just ended up hurting a lot of good people.
What happened in Mosul to my unit, it was a mistake. Mistakes were made. People ended up dying.